By the way, if you want to become a platinum or gold member, the way to do that is you email hello@theplatform.kiwi. Do it now. hello@theplatform.kiwi. Ask to become a platinum or gold member of the platform. We cannot stay in business without you, without your support. Sean, I'm hopeless with tax talk. All I know are crazy house prices, inflation, and the long wait just to book a doctor. Love your show, though. Don't want to bash Rob. Poor guy probably needs a hug. Yeah, or some detox. Well, look, to try and make some sense of this, I got a mate I've known for a long time. He's an economist. He's been a bank economist. He runs his own shop now called Bagrie Economics. And boy, there's been a lot of heat around this Rob MacCulloch, Roger Douglas thing. And I thought I'd check in with Cameron Bagrie to figure out if he can make sense of it for us all. Cameron, good morning, mate. How are you?
Good morning from the Hawke's Bay.
Look, mate, this has really sort of kicked off late last week, this Douglas MacCulloch thing. And we had Rob MacCulloch on yesterday, and I'll be honest, I felt like there was an argument there, but boy, it was wrapped up in a whole lot of paranoia and angriness. What is it that he and Douglas are fundamentally saying?
Oh, yes, if you want the spirit of what's gone on in the past week, there's an awful lot of pointing the finger, and the blame has been put some levels on the Minister of Finance because they went pretty hot in regard to we're going to get the economy back on track, and we're obviously not back on track. The finger's being pointed at the Reserve Bank of New Zealand as well, too late in cutting rates. Yeah, but the people just need to calm the farm, right? There's an awful lot that's going on across New Zealand at the moment, and the bottom line, Sean, is that there's a lot of cyclical support, i.e. help, that's going to push the economy along in the next 12 months. So we're going to see some growth. Interest rates, boost farm incomes. You've got the big Fonterra injection from the sale of the consumer business. Let's just back the truck up. The economy is going to move forward again. That June quarter, I think, was a bit of an outlier. But boy, do we have some structural challenges. This economy has been deteriorating for 15 years. You look at the trend for productivity growth. You look at we've been over-investing in housing, under-investing in real productive assets. This New Zealand economy is getting rewired, literally replumbed. You don't replumb an economy overnight. It takes an awful long time.
Is it all Nicola Willis's fault? Should she resign? Because it's been very personal, and Rob MacCulloch was incredibly personal towards the Minister of Finance yesterday.
Well, look, you can park that personal sort of rubbish. I don't have an awful lot of time for it. But if you ever look at any finance minister, current one or previous ones, have all found themselves in what's called the impossible trinity. And the impossible trinity is a triangle, and you sort of got, three parts of the triangle. At one part, you want to demonstrate your fiscal credentials. You want to run a tight fiscal ship. You don't want to be borrowing too much money. And you want to be running surpluses as opposed to deficits. So that's a high priority. And obviously, to Roger Douglas, that's an imperative in his book. What you've also got is the demands, the tax relief and efficient tax system, and you want to plough money into infrastructure. Because guess what? If you're not spending money in infrastructure, you're not going to get the productivity growth that underpins the economy, that provides the tax revenue that's behind your
Rob
fiscal
MacCulloch
forecast.
also very wedded to the idea of a compulsory super scheme, personalised compulsory super scheme.
Well, it's interesting that Winston's put it on the table. It looks like a bit of a rehash of what we saw in 1997.
Yep.
I'd favour a little bit more compulsion as well, as long as we tied it to making sure that superannuation was means tested on the other side. Because if you've got a pretty big KiwiSaver balance, why on earth should you double dip?
You're bold, Cameron. You're bold. It's such a good idea, and it's one that no politician is ever going to have the courage to implement, mate.
Well, and that's actually part of the problem that we're seeing in the modern day era compared to what we used to see politically 10, 20, 30 years ago. And this is a global shift. Sure, we've gone from political leadership, which, there's always some politics and involved with any government, but what we are seeing now is more and more populism. And populism is about short-termism. It's about appeasing as many voters as you can, as opposed to sort of stepping back and thinking, what's the goddamn big picture here? What do we need to do to get New Zealand back on track and make New Zealand a more prosperous economy so people want to stay here as opposed to go and live in Australia?
Yeah. Can I ask you, Cameron, I know there is some feeling amongst lobby groups and industry associations I've talked to that the two big parties, the current two big parties, Labor and National, it would be good if they could agree on some fundamentals. And I'm not talking a grand political coalition, but I'm talking about a consensus about fundamentals about things like super and fiscal policy. Would that help us make progress?
Oh, without a doubt, because we've got this thing called an election cycle. So there's not too many years within the election cycle that an awful lot of stuff gets done. What we need to see is embracing what's called long-termism at the expense of short-termism. Unfortunately, the election cycle goes against long-termism. And, we need bipartisan agreement on things such as the path for New Zealand superannuation, because everybody knows it's not affordable.
Yeah.
So let's leave the rugby jerseys at the door, or the political jerseys, banners at the door, and get in there and bang something together that's going to stand the test of time. Infrastructure is another big one. PPPs, public-private sector partnerships are going to be inevitable. More tolling, all that sort of stuff. There must be some common areas that we can get the two big players at the table. But even, sure enough, if you look at that 2023 election, Labor and National got 65% of the vote, and all the other political parties got 35%. Now, that is signalling, and we're seeing it's happening around the globe as well. We're seeing the growth in what's called the political periphery. And the political periphery from cycle to cycle is going to drag you to the far left or the far right. And it's that extremism that I think is contributing some of the division that we're seeing across New Zealand at the moment. We need centralist policy that's going to stand the test of time and give businesses this thing called certainty. Because guess what? When businesses have got certainty, when they've got stability, they're going to invest. When they've got uncertainty, they don't invest. They park the spades, they park the trucks, and they don't employ additional employees.
The other thing, Cameron, I looked at what happened last week, and we didn't get into that story till Monday when we spoke to Rob MacCulloch, who now thinks I'm Jacinda Ardern reincarnated. He made all sorts of accusations about the Business Roundtable or the New Zealand Initiative running our economic policy and Oliver Hartwich being some evil Machiavellian guy behind the scenes. Is there any truth to that, or has he just kind of lost the plot?
I think he's gone off the deep end in regard to what's going on.
Okay.
There's no shortage of economic commentators out there in regard to what the government would like the government to be doing. Look, I was on the record saying I didn't agree with the National Party's tax cut package. So they went ahead with the tax cut package anyway, so we're all going to have our own views in regard to what we think the country or the Minister of Finance and all other people should be doing. A big one to me is education, and I've been quite vocal about that space.
Boy, the government's talking up its investments in education. And another thing from Luxon and Stanford yesterday, they really do see that as a positive policy area, so they talk about it an awful lot.
But it's interesting, Sean, when you said it. I almost get like the feeling like the government's trying to do too much. A whole lot of little things. It's like we're going at 500 million miles an hour. Announcement after announcement. It's like the daily set of here's another thing to plug this hole, all that sort of stuff. It just doesn't look like, when you look at it from the top down, we've got a top-down strategy, and particularly a strategy that is well communicated to New Zealand in regard to, look, jump on for the ride. We might have to suck it up for the next 12 to 18 months, but this is the plan to drive a more prosperous economy that's going to underpin living standards and mean you're going to be better off, more money.
Well, I think we've got a Prime Minister who's desperately interested, like David Brett in the office, in being popular and being liked, and maybe doesn't have the wisdom to shut up, stick to his course. He's always wanted to be on social media and be the cool guy, and maybe we need something more fundamental, more solid than that, Cameron.